Welcome to Fright Night again. Fright Night Part II is directed by Tommy Lee Wallace. It stars William Ragsdale as Charlie Brewster, Roddy McDowall as Peter Vincent, Tracy Lind as Alex, Julie Carmen as Regine, John Grease as Louie, Russell Clark as Belle, Brian Thompson as Bosworth, and Ernie Sabella as Dr. Harrison. Fright Night Part II is a sequel to the 1985 cult classic Fright Night, and originally Tom Holland was going to return. A sequel was inevitable, but he was tied up with making Child's Play, the first Chucky movie. You also were going to have the character of Amy and Evil Ed come back, but the actress who played Amy, Amanda Burst, was tied up with Married with Children, and the actor who played Evil Ed wanted to do 976 Evil. So they reworked the script in this film to have Charlie have a new love interest and to have another character. Evil Ed was originally going to be the character that John Grease plays in the film. How does Fright Night Part II rank up? It's actually a solid sequel, and it's kind of a travesty, really. TriStar Pictures distributed this, and it was actually released in other places around the world before released in North America. It was supposed to come out in 1988 and did not come out till 1989, and it was a very limited screening, which is sad because this looks like a theatrical film. It doesn't look like a straight-to-video type of film, and it's a big-budget movie. It's a well-made film, and it's sad that it got such a limited release. Of course, it was released on VHS, DVD, and you really haven't had a Blu-ray release other than some bootlegs. It's kind of sad. It's one of those films that has been lost over the annals of time. But William Ragsdale and Roddy McDowall do reprise their roles from the original, and Roddy McDowall has a lot more fun with this. He's a lot more confident as Peter Vincent. Charlie Brewster is a very different character here. It starts off with a recap of the original film, and then we find out that Charlie doesn't believe there's vampires. There's this new character of this doctor, and you don't know whether or not he's a vampire with them or not. It has this character of Regine. It's a female vampire, but what makes this so cool is that it's on its own. It's another type of Fright Night, but it's a sequel in the regard that Regine is actually the sister of Jerry Dandridge from the first Fright Night. So really, it's her revenge movie going after Charlie and Peter Vincent in this film, and it's very, very good that way. Once you find out Regine is actually Jerry Dandridge's sister, the film becomes a lot more interesting. But he's in college. He's no longer dating Amy, and he has this new girlfriend named Alex, and you get to see their relationship. I like the characters in the first film. I wish we got to see more of a true sequel, but I like this because who stays with a person over a course of years, and not only that, Alex is a much more interesting character. She becomes more of a proactive character once she's drawn into this world of the vampires existing in real life. Peter Vincent, like I said earlier, is a lot more confident, but Regine is really great. Julie Carmen does such a fantastic job in this. She actually canceled some projects to focus on this role. She read Anne Rice novels and looked a bit at Chris Sarandon's performance in the original Fright Night. She does a phenomenal job. She actually played a vampire in an episode of Diagnosis Murder as well, which is pretty crazy. But she has this posse. It has Belle, who's like a rollerblading, like transgender vampire. And then we have Louie, played by John Grease. He's kind of like a werewolf, so to speak. And then Brian Thompson is Bosworth, and he eats bugs. He's a very gross character, but it's kind of cool. It's actually Brian Thompson's decision to name each genus of the insects he is eating before he eats them. So that was pretty cool. You really got to see each of the actors' personality and their characters, and that made it different because in the original it was just Chris Sarandon with like a guardian. This one, Regine has her own posse of vampires. So it's kind of cool seeing a group of vampires work for her and basically manipulate the characters of Charlie and Peter Vincent and his girlfriend Alex. It's pretty crazy in that regard. And it's interesting to see Charlie basically struggle of what's real and what's not real. He's trying to come to terms of what to believe and not to believe anymore, and it's very interesting to see the character in that state, considering in the original Fright Night, he was the only character that knew about vampires existing. This time, Peter Vincent is the one to know, and he's trying to convince everybody else. And it's pretty interesting seeing that, and then Regine and the others in her group manipulate the main characters. But the effects are very well done. The cinematography, it has that 80s look to it, and it's kind of more crisp and clean. I kind of miss some of the grittiness and dark nature of the first, but this one definitely has a nice look to it. It's on a college environment, it's in the city, it's very different. It's not just in one night or one week, really. There's more locations, there's more time, there's more settings. It's also interesting to see the character of Charlie progress. Even though he's dealing with this, we get to see him in college. He's progressed from high school to college. We get to see him in a new relationship, have hopes for the future. And Peter Vincent has his Fright Night show back, which Regine tries to compromise later on in the movie. It's really great to see the characters progress, because a lot of sequels, this could have easily just been Fright Night Redux, where they just redid everything just like the first. And in a way it is, but in another way it's its own movie. It's does something different. It progresses the characters we've seen. So it could have easily fallen into the sequelitis trappings of just being Fright Night redone. And it is, but really it's much more and it's much different than the original Fright Night. And Regine, even though she's a sister of Jerry Danger, she's a very different character. It's nice seeing a female vampire use a power of seduction and just mind manipulation to mess with these characters. And also, again, having a group of vampires is very different. Not like in the level of the Lost Boys, but it is its own thing. And it's nice just seeing them just go crazy. Each of them have their own different, unique abilities that make them threatening to the protagonists. And the scares, it isn't as scary as Fright Night, but the effects are pretty damn good. There's some crazy effects here, like with Bosworth. When he gets killed, there's like all these maggots coming out. And you can kind of tell it's fake, but some part of it looks real. Like, something about practical effects goes a long way. Louis, the werewolf effects look fantastic. The way they have him climb on the walls. The way they use Peter Vincent, Regine's effects. There's some areas that look a little bit dated. There's others that stand up very well with the contacts, blood, the bat effects, the fog. Just practical uses of special effects go a long way in this movie. And it's a very well-made movie. Nothing about this movie looks cheap, per se. It's a bit dated to today's standards, but it doesn't look cheap. It looks like a well-made horror film. And it's very rare to have a sequel not only live up to the name of the first one, but to be good on its own. And Fright Night Part II is one of those rare horror sequels that is a good movie on its own. And I like the first one just a bit more. The first one will always be iconic, but the second film is very underrated, and I feel like it should get more love. I love the second Fright Night. I give Fright Night Part II a 4 out of 5. It definitely makes the final cut. And somebody needs to make a patent. Shout Factory needs to get the rights. Somebody needs to make a Blu-ray of Fright Night Part 2 and a Blu-ray of Fright Night and release them together in a double feature. Somebody just needs to have a Blu-ray of it, because it's a shame that we have all the remakes and the sequels to those remakes out on Blu-ray before you have the original Fright Night available to more than 3,000 people, or Fright Night Part 2. But yeah, the acting is great. William Ragsdale really does a lot more in this. He's not exactly that all-American teenager in this. He's a little bit more adult, but also it's kind of annoying to see him not believe in vampires. And I don't think you really need the character of the therapist. It does get a little campy. That's one thing I have to say about this movie, is that it does feel a bit more campy than the original Fright Night, which really felt more scary in certain scenes. This one does have some level of camp, and supposedly they toned down the level of campiness and added a more serious tone to it, and I'm glad. This one's kind of a balance, but you do get some funny humor with Roddy McDowall's Peter Vincent. There's a lot of funny jokes there. There's a lot of funny stuff that's with him getting arrested and put into a state mental institute. There's a lot of funny scenes between Charlie and his girlfriend and some of the other characters. It does have some humor, but the character of the therapist just didn't make sense to me. Maybe he's like half a vampire? I don't know. The rules didn't apply to him as much as it did to the other vampires. He even walks in the daylight, which is very different. But with the other vampires, they play upon the traditional rules. It's nice seeing their lair, and it's a lot larger than the original house. It's a very different showdown, and it's a very unique and original showdown. Of course, it involves a vampire's weakness, but the showdown is very original, and they did something completely different than they did in the original Fright Night. They did it in a different way, at least. They made it feel original, and it's an isolated ending, so it has a beginning, middle, and end, not only for this film, but for the Fright Night film series. Originally, they were going to make a Part 3, but that didn't go through, and we're stuck with Part 1 and Part 2. And it's a shame, because I really would have loved to see a Part 3. Even if they made a Part 3 right now, just William Ragsdale or something, I would love to see it. But Roddy McDowall is fantastic as Peter Vincent. Of course, it's a mixture between Vincent Price and Peter Cushing, who played Van Helsing, so that's kind of cool. to see that. And of course, he's familiar with sequels. He did the Planet of the Apes sequel, so this was kind of cool seeing him reprise the role and be more confident, see the character progress. I like this movie. I like this movie a lot, and it's very underrated. If you have never seen Fright Night or Fright Night Part II, I highly recommend it. And if you have seen Fright Night Part II, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What did you think of Fright Night Part II? Which one's your favorite? I love both, but the original will always be my favorite. Anyway, let me know in the comments below. If you like this video, click the like button and subscribe for more videos. Expect to see more Final Cut reviews. Stay tuned for my next review in which I'll be going over John Carpenter's The Thing.